Hello everybody, this is KGreen829 and welcome back to the AAC Wrap-Up Show. Now, I am doing it earlier this week than I normally do because all the AAC games have finished for the week, and I had extra time, so I thought I'll just knock it out. Then later in the week I will do, I'll do my recruiting. I'll do a separate show to go over recruiting. It'll be a shorter show, just that way we're not missing out on anything. So, going into it, let's start. We're going to be looking at the results, and first up we have a game Houston at East Carolina. So going into this week, I thought Houston had a real chance of going in and getting the upset at East Carolina, and that just wasn't the case. Houston just had trouble dealing with East Carolina. Steven Rivero, the quarterback for East Carolina, 19 attempts, only 9 completions, but still had 232 yards on the one touchdown. And while Houston showed some flashes, losing 31-21, their quarterback, Trayvon Cawthorn, throwing 3 touchdowns and 198 yards, was very promising. It just was not enough. East Carolina just came out. They looked really good, especially wide receiver Denzel Green. 10 targets, 7 catches, 197 yards, and 1 touchdown. This was just, if you like offense, this was the game for you. It was two teams that, you know, just kept scoring and nothing could stop them. Houston kind of rallied at the end of the game, but it was too little, too late. They lose by 10. They dropped to 1-4. A team that has looked promising, but I mean, they're sliding, and I don't know. I think their season might be over. I don't know if, metaphorically, I don't know if they can really be in contention for a bowl game unless things change, like turn around quickly. And by quickly, I mean right now. They need to turn around next week. Next up, we have Memphis. We have Tulsa at Memphis. Two teams who were 0-4 going into this week. And I talked about it. One team was going to come out of this game and get their first win. And my prediction was Tulsa, and that was right. Tulsa comes away with the win with a final score of 26-24. It was a close and exciting game. Memphis, by all accounts, had the better game. 2 touchdowns by their quarterback, 389 yards. Brian Hosley, Memphis' quarterback, had a great game. Tyler Smith on the ground, 109 yards and a touchdown on 16 attempts. And then Ryan Forbes at wide receiver, 11 targets, 10 catches, 238 yards. And then even Stephen Cole, another wide receiver, 9 targets, 4 catches, 74 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Memphis had the better game, but Tulsa they kind of just dug in and they found something that let them get the win, despite not having the best performance. Marquise Ikule, again, 196 yards, not the greatest, but he did put 2 touchdowns up on the board. So I mean, it was a really big game for this Tulsa team. And coming away with their first one of the season, this can be a big turning point for the team. They can really use this as a momentum to bring back. Like I've been saying all season, they haven't been getting the results, but they have the talent. So they get their first one of the season. Is this the point where they start turning around and they start winning games again? I would love to see it, not really next week because I'm playing them. But other than that, I would love to see Tulsa come back and start winning games again. They are one of the more talented teams in the sim, and I mean, it's always fun to have an AAC team dominating the league. So moving on, we have Navy at Tulane. Oh, sorry, Tulane at Navy. That's my bad. Um, and this game, Tulane wins 23-3. They go into Ann Arbor and they pull off a great win. Bronson Morrill is looking like he's returning to form, and while he's not there yet, he had a much more improved game than what we've been seeing recently. 56 attempts for 29 completions, which isn't great, but 360 yards and a touchdown. 2 interceptions, again, not great. And the offensive line held up great for him with 1 sack. Navy is still struggling with their quarterback. Benny Ramirez, 40 attempts, 16 completions, and 166 yards, and just an interception. And then the rest of the offense didn't look well. Tulane tried going a little experimental this game, having their backup quarterback, Lodi Thomas, start at be their second choice at running back, and on half the touches of starter Alexi Patterson, he was able to pick up 1 more yard. So it's 6 attempts for 25 yards for Haloti Thomas, and we may be seeing the new starting running back for Tulane. Going back, going even further, looking into these stats, Navy just had a problem with dropping. Donald Perkins, 4 targets, 4 catches, but that's about the only good performance. You have Brent Burgess, the tight end, 14 targets, 4 catches. Tevin Griffin, the third, 9 targets, 4 catches. Wes Osuna, 7 targets, 2 catches. This team just couldn't. They just couldn't buy a catch. On the other side, a little bit of the same. Travion Love, 14 targets, 7 catches, 20 yards. Devontae Pena, 8 targets, 4 catches, 19 yards. And if you follow Tulane, you notice I left out a name because there was one receiver in this game who had a great game, and that's Fernando Thomas. 15 targets, 13 catches, 286 yards, and a touchdown. Fernando Thomas is back after 2 disappointing weeks that has really dropped his stock in the Heisman. He comes out and has what is one of his best games to date, and it's a huge game for Fernando Thomas. Really propels him to the win. But on top of that, I want to talk about the emergence of Tulane's defense. This is a defense that has struggled all week, but it looks like they found something this week. Khaled Bullets, I know I'm spending a lot of time on Tulane, but this is a team that had a lot of stuff going in, so I apologize for that. But Khaled Bullet, 8 tackles, 2 assisted tackles, 2 TFLs, and a sack. Marvin Norris, 4 solo tackles and an interception. Free safety Kyle R, 3 solo tackles, 2 forced fumbles. 1 was recovered by defensive tackle Tyler Rader, 3 tackles, 2 TFLs, 2 sacks, and a fumble recovery, like I said. And the other was recovered by cornerback Daniel Kaui, 2 tackles, and then again, the fumble recovery. A very strong game for Tulane. And I almost forgot, Marvin Norris on his interception actually took it 14 yards to the house. So Tulane gets their first defensive touchdown of the season, and it's a big one. That was part of their 14-point first quarter that, while Navy was able to shut down Tulane for the second and third quarter, and Tulane got back on it and got 3 field goals in the fourth. That interception seemed to be the nail in the coffin. Even though it was the first quarter, it kind of just changed the game, and it was just a good game to watch. It was a good defensive battle for both teams, but Tulane really showed their stuff on defense. Next, we go over to Cincinnati at Temple. Again, like I said, I predicted this game to go to Cincinnati. Okay, yeah, they're going into Temple. And yeah, they're on a slide, but I expected them to come back. But I saw Temple coming out of here with a win. What happened, nobody could have seen coming. Temple absolutely demolished Cincinnati by a score of 42-3. Temple goes to 3-2 on the season, and Cincinnati is now 0-3 in conference play and 3-3 overall. So they're 3-0 out of conference and 0-3 in conference. So something's going on. They just can't beat the teams in their conference. Temple, like I said, just complete destruction. Quarterback Mike Perkins, 49 attempts, 23 completions, 314 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Wasn't sacked. Then we look at their running game. Mike Perkins and Garrett Maxey both have 20 rushing attempts, and they get 129 yards and 2 touchdowns and 127 yards and 1 touchdown respectively. Huge game on the ground by these 2 running backs. It was just an insanely dominant running performance for them. And then you look at the receivers, and I mean, nobody really stands out. Tajan Hecker got 100 yards, but 14 targets, 5 catches. But 3 touchdowns in the receiving game for Don Scott, Matthew Cunningham, and Tajan Hecker. And I mean, this team just looked really good. This Temple team, I mean, we'll talk about them a little bit more later. But again, nobody expected this game. That was an insane score. And then our last game of the week, because UCF got the week off with a bye week, we have SMU at USF. 2-1-4 teams. So again, 2 teams that have, it's not much is going for them, but they're trying to figure themselves out. And USF gets a win at home by a score of 17-3. We will talk about SMU a little bit more. But at USF, they did it how they usually do it. I mean, their quarterback, 14 attempts, 10 completions, 81 yards, 2 touchdowns. Not putting up too many yards, but still producing. Their running game being okay, but SMU, their defense looked good. But USF wins games through their defense, and when they win games, it's because their defense has a lockdown performance, and this was no exception. Tyler Graham couldn't get any touchdowns. It was 42 attempts, but only 24 completions, 242 yards. On the ground, they could get absolutely nothing going. A combined 18 yards on the ground. So, and you look at that, that's 260 total yards, which is, again, USF is showing off on defense. They are one of the better defensive teams in the sim, in my opinion. Um, but you did see some flashes for SMU. Jake Greenberg, wide receiver, 9 targets, 7 catches, 119 yards. While he couldn't get into the end zone, which is something I will talk about, he had a good game. Tony Sikoro, 14 targets, 8 catches. Again, dropped a lot of passes, but 79 yards. And again, another good game. Adam Hansen, 8 for 4, dropped too many passes, but 26 yards on 4 catches is not terrible. So, but yeah, again, USF's defense is just so good, and they have won games through their defense alone. So now let's move on to our AAC rankings. And for the first time of me doing this show, we have a different team in the rankings. And that team, coming off of a huge win, is Temple. Temple, like I said, huge win this week. Just absolutely destroyed Cincinnati, 42-3, who I thought was the third best team in the conference. I had Temple at like 4 or 5, and absolutely destroying Cincinnati. That's enough to take them up. I'm leaving them back just because, again, 2 losses, and the teams we can go that are ahead of them only have 1. Temple is, they're coming and they're finding success recently, but can it be sustained? That's why I have them at 3. If they can win another game next week and show that this is sustained success, then I think they could jump Tulane. Speaking of Tulane, we got number 2, sorry, we have number 2, Tulane. We're going old school with this picture. Big fan of these uniforms, so that's why I use these pictures. Tulane has struggled in the past 2 weeks. A close win against Memphis, and then a tough loss against Indiana for the first of the season. And they showed real resilience. They went into Navy, a team that has struggled, and they used it as a bounce back game. And it came at a good time, and they played hard, and they won. There's still things that they're going to try to improve on, but this is a good spot for Tulane. And at number 1, they get the benefit of not having to play. UCF remains at number 1. Tied in record with Tulane, but I mean, I can't move them because they didn't lose, and I couldn't move Tulane up above them because, again, even though Tulane got the win, I feel like UCF is just a better team right now. So, moving on to our second to last segment, we have, oh, sorry, forgot. Here's the full rankings. We have UCF at 1, 4-1, 2-0 in conference. Tulane at 2, 4-1, 2-0 in conference. Temple, East Carolina also jumps Cincinnati, as Cincinnati falls to 5 with their 0-3 conference record. And then we have USF at 6, 2-4, 2-1, and Tulsa with a huge jump goes from 10 to 7 after getting their win. They are now 1-4, 1-1 in conference. Houston, who I've been high on, is at 8, 1-4, 0-2 in conference. They had the huge win against TAMU, but again, like I was saying with Temple, they couldn't sustain it. They had that big win, and that was the only one they've had. So again, lack of sustained winning and lack of sustained performance was really hurting them. Then we have SMU at 1-5, and then at 10-11 we have our 2 winless teams, Navy and Memphis, respectively. Navy is ranked ahead of Memphis right now because I feel like they are playing a little bit better, and also they have 1 less game played. So, sorry, there might be a cut there. I made a mistake on the next slide, so I had to go and edit that real quick. But all right, like I said, we're going to be getting into the next segment, and this is our second to last segment, and that is going to be, we're going to talk about SMU. So, what is there to say about SMU? Well, SMU is a very promising team. They have some good players, but they just haven't been able to get that to translate. So I wanted to take a look at SMU. I wanted to see what has been the problem with them. So SMU runs an air raid, so I wanted to take a look at their passing offense first, and that was not the problem. They are seventh. I was surprised to see it. They have the 17th most passing yards in the league, but there is a caveat to that, and while they are getting all these yards, they are not able to finish off drives, despite being the 17th best team in the league in terms of passing yards. They only have 7 passing touchdowns, and they have 4 interceptions. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the problem is, but they get into. Oh, my bad. Hold on. They get into. They get into. Just they get far down the field and they can't convert, and it's a mystery to me and something that I really don't know what to solve. What to do to solve. But moving on, they have a bit of a two-back system. They run with Sam Carter and Rudy Ross. Carter is more of a receiving back, while Ross is more of a power back. Carter has B agility and C strength with B speed, and Ross has B strength and C agility. D speed. I think Carter has C speed actually, so that's my bad. Again, depending on who's running more, it depends on the scheme you're going to use. Carter is more set for an inside run scheme, while Ross is more set for Carter is more set for an outside run scheme, while Ross is more set for an inside run scheme. The running backs are doing good. The offense is struggling, but it's definitely not the running backs' fault. It's not the fault of the passing game. And that leaves us with one more question. It means that something is fundamentally wrong with their offense, and I thought it was the O-line. So I went to take a look at the O-line, and their O-line is actually one of the better units in the league. I was looking through and I was trying to figure out the problem uh, because their quarterback averages, he's sacked on average 4 times per game. But, there's 3 A's on that offensive line, the center's a B, and the last offensive lineman is a B. So I'm like, what is wrong with this team? And then I found it. Center Everson Cohen has C pass block and C run block, and again, like I said, they're mostly passing, because they're going air raid. And I was looking down the centers, and I saw freshman center Austin Escalano. So Everson Cohen's a sophomore, so him playing is good for development. But I saw Austin Escalano. I'm like, all right, here's the fix. Austin Escalano starts at center because he's better pass blocker with B. Yeah, the run blocking is not that good with D, but with only D run blocking. But again, they're running air raid. They're mostly focused on passing. But then I looked over and I saw a bigger problem. Um, Richard LeBlanc. He is one of the better offensive linemen in the sim. Okay, he's an A overall, and he's got A run defense. So the problem is he's got D pass. He's got A run block. Problem is he's got A pass. Sorry, my bad. Let me start over. This guy, Richard LeBlanc, A overall, A run block, D pass block, and he's on a team that mainly passes. Um, so I mean, sometimes you watch him on the field, it's like he's never seen a passing play in his life. That's how lost he looks. And it's not good. And while he is a great lineman for run blocking, he just doesn't fit on this team. So my recommendation is Everson Cohen or Austin Escalona. One of them's going to play center. The next is going to slide over to right guard, and they're going to replace Rashad LeBlanc. He's a great player. He just cannot play for this team. Now, moving on to the defense. Sorry about that. Again, another mistake in the slideshow. But let's move on to the defense. And hold on, let me pull that up. So I started off looking at the secondary, and that led me to take a look at Ryan Drury and Ramon Fry, strong safety and the free safety of the team. And these two guys are both studs. They are leading this team, and they are probably the best safety duo in the league. So, I mean, there's not much to say. These two dudes are ballers, and they are, I mean, there's nothing you can hate about them. They are doing everything they can to help this defense out. But SMU has really bad defense, both pass and run. So something was wrong, and I found it, and it starts with their cornerbacks. While their safeties are great, their cornerbacks, other than the first two, are absolutely terrible in coverage, which lead to opponents' receivers getting open. Sorry, which leads to opponent receivers getting open and torching the defense, which leads to the opponents, you know, getting lots of yards and starting to run up the score on SMU. The unfortunate thing here is there is no fix. They do not have any better coverage. They do not have any better coverage cornerbacks that they can slot in. This is a problem that they have to stick through, and there's nothing they can do about it this year. They have to make cornerback a priority in recruiting, and they need to go after some of the best coverage corners they can get if they want to, improve over the couple seasons. Uh, it might take some time, um, and it might be a little bit frustrating, but they need to completely overhaul that cornerback room. Maybe find a new cornerback coach, whatever it takes, really. But next, you move on to the linebackers, and the outside linebackers. You have three very talented outside linebackers, and unfortunately, one of them needs to sit, and that would be junior outside linebacker Ryan Felicio. I think that makes the most sense. Maurice Thomas is, you know, lockdown coverage linebacker, and Scruggs. Sorry, I didn't put his first name, but Scruggs is a better pass rusher. So starting both of them gives you the best pass rush linebacker you have and the best coverage linebacker you have, which is a good thing. While Ryan Felicio is a good player, Maurice Thomas is graduating, so he will get his shot next year as a senior. So I look forward to watching him play. He's a talented linebacker, and he can make a real difference given a shot. But I don't think he should get a shot this year. Now, moving over to their inside linebackers. SMU is running a 3-4 defense, so they're starting two inside linebackers, and they have the same exact problem as they do with outside linebackers. Two spots to fill, three great inside linebackers. And for them, inside linebacker senior Mitch Williams is the one who doesn't get to start. Again, this makes perfect sense. Armani O'Hearn is a great run stopper, the best on the team, and Senio Kennard is a great coverage guy. They're both needed. I wouldn't change anything here. Let Mitch Williams ride the bench. But then you move on, and we got to start talking about their run defense, and it's atrocious. They've let up almost 1,000 yards rushing this season, and that starts with their defensive tackle. Reggie Hood, their defensive tackle, has had a lot of success so far and is the best defensive tackle they have. But I mean, he's absolutely been lighting up opposing teams. But the only problem is he is not good in the run game. Backup Steve Sosa is actually a great run stopper, and he may be the better choice to start at DT, just for that fact. Again, Reggie Hood has been a great player though. So if you feel that Reggie Hood is just that much better of a player and it's not worth, going down to a lower skilled Sosa just to stop the run, I completely understand and respect that. I think Reggie Hood deserves to be the starter. It's just Steve Sosa might be a little bit better for the team. And finally, we get to the defensive ends, and again, best choices for the defensive ends. Nothing I would change. SMU is still reeling from the death penalty back in 1988, and they're struggling. As I went over it, they're struggling to find relevance again, and you see that in the rankings, and you see that in everything that I outlined here. They're a team that has really no direction, and it's the offense. By all accounts, the offense should be good, but they just aren't. And I mean, you look at the defense, and again, goes back to what I was saying: no direction. They have no guys who can cover, and even then, they have half man, half zone. Then you look at their linebackers: half coverage, half run stopper like pass rush. Okay. Then you go to the defensive line: half pass rush, half run defense. they have no direction. They're split between two different ideals on defense, and I mean that'll never work out for them. So they need to fundamentally change what they're doing if they want to escape this. I think it all still goes back to the death penalty, and that's all I have to say on SMU. Um, but uh, now we get to the discussion, um, and we're going to be doing a quick recap of next week's games. We have no one with a bye week, which means that a team will be facing an out of conference opponent, and this week that will be Cincinnati going up against Coach Poopy Rhino Pico at Bowling Green. Next up, we have UCF at East Carolina. So sorry, going back to my predictions, I feel like Bowling Green will be able to pull it up again, like pull out a win against Cincinnati. Cincinnati has had a great out of conference schedule, so I wouldn't be surprised if they, as soon as they go back out of conference, they find another way to win. But we will see. But I think that game, the AAC takes a hit losing to an out of conference team. Next up, we have UCF at East Carolina, and this is going to be a big game because this is my number 4 team versus my number 1 team. And if East Carolina can come up with the upset against UCF, they would take a huge jump in the standings, at least moving up to second place. I expect UCF to win, but it's at East Carolina, so I would not rule them out. I can definitely see East Carolina coming away with a win. Next up, we have Temple at Houston. And while it's at Houston, and while Houston has the talent, like I said, Temple has just been really good recently, and they're going up against a team in the AAC that has just not been able to find success. I think Temple takes the win here, and I mean, another big step in reaching that AAC Conference Championship game. Next up, we have Memphis at SMU. So 0-5 Memphis is going to play SMU, who's been struggling, who we just talked about. And I feel like SMU gets their second win here. I feel like they're going to be able to down Memphis. They're not really a great team. So we'll see what happens with that. Next up, we have Navy at USF. It's at USF. So I mean, Navy's been struggling all season. I don't see that changing in this game. I feel like USF comes away with a win. Next up, we have Tulane at Tulsa. And this game is a bit of a toss-up for me. I would love to think that I have got this with Tulane, and that is going to be my prediction. But Tulsa is a team that scares me. They have the talent, like I said all season. They have the talent, and they finally got things going for them with their first win. I mean, this is a very dangerous team. If they can figure out what's wrong, they can run the table and they can win the rest of their games. So again, team that scares me. I am going Tulane, but Tulsa has home field advantage. Don't be too surprised if you see an upset. Now, that's all I have. It's just about 30 minutes, but that's all I have for you guys this week. Not this week, though. I'll be back a little bit later once the recruiting sync happens with a special recruiting episode of the AAC Wrap-Up Show. And so I'll talk to you then. And until then, go AAC. We're kind of bad, though.